It's like wider than the Mississippi, but the banks are lower.
Because this is my first 100-miler, I wanted to be more organized, I think, and like, yeah, plot it out a little bit. So I got Jason Koop's whatever, like guide to ultra running textbook, just to get an idea of like what are other elements that I should be thinking about that I'm not already familiar with. But through his book, I basically got like an outline of what training for a 100-mile could look like. And throughout any of my ultra experiences before, I had never implemented speed work or like thought about doing different tempo runs or anything. And that was pretty forefront with his training plan. So I blocked out close to 6 months and just tried to target intervals, tempo, and steady state runs. And I wasn't necessarily compliant with it the whole time.
You, weren't super strict with your mileage, but you kept a good amount of like 40 to 60 to 70 mile weeks. And so you ended up stacking stuff in July as I was finishing up working there, and we had a couple weeks off and then left Alaska. So July 1st you ran about 35 miles from our place through Wilwa Pass to O'Malley and back, and that was a really long day by accident, sort of.
Yeah, that was like an 11-hour day.
Yeah, and you were like crossing streams and having, I don't remember, there were shenanigans though. You were out longer than you planned.
Mm-hmm.
And then you like got home and crashed, and I had some Hawaiian like barbecue and rice or something that I picked up after work. And then July 4th you did Mount Marathon 5K because you had gotten into that in the lottery and I hadn't, and your goal was just to be part of it and not get injured, which was a success, which you went to with Maggie. July 8th you did a backyard ultra out of Palmer, and you deliberately did 62.5 miles, which is 15 laps, so 15 hours, 4.167 miles for every lap, every hour. 12 laps in. And then you recovered from that by doing a ride in Saldovia for like 30 miles, the Kenai Peninsula, and ride in Denali National Park on the park road. We just went out, camped, and then turned around. And that worked really well. Like, you stayed healthy through this whole thing.
Yeah.
Then Kasugi Ridge, we had a window of clear weather for that, so we got up and did that and saw Denali and those peaks. How were you feeling by that point? I feel like you were kind of worked on Kasugi a little bit, or just
that
tired?
day felt really long for me. I think it was 30 miles.
It's a little bit of like going through some swampy stuff.
Yeah.
How's it feel? Good? Denali is now shrouded, and we think this big glacier is Eldridge Glacier. So your last 50K in July was Wildwood Trail in Portland's Forest Park, and then no, that's not true. So there's that, and then you did another 50K August 12th
On
when
the
we were
course.
scouting the course, which was basically just going out on a PCT, which worked pretty well. It was kind of hot. It was hotter than Alaska. Had been very cool, like highs in the 60s. It was pretty much the top we experienced that summer.
Yeah. I'm glad I did that. And you ran some of it with me, but we did like pretty much the start of O'Lally Lake, I think. No, we started at O'Lally Meadows, and then I did 15 out north and then 15 back south.
Yep.
And I'm really glad I did that because it like alleviated fears of how technical the trail was. It was pretty
it was not
buttery,
was,
at least for those
because it was
15
the PCT.
miles. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think you kept your mileage up and then just tapered the last few weeks. But those were the big runs.
Yep.
So I got a job in Medford, so we went there at the start of August. It was really smoky when we got there, and you just meet. Well, before that, we were in Rhododendron and Welch's, which was great. But we got to Medford, and
the AQI was like 350.
Mm-hmm.
And we both adopted this mindset, like, well, there's absolutely nothing we can do about the status of the air
I think
on
that
race
was just
day.
your take right away. Was just you got a gym membership and started running the treadmill.
Yeah.
And we only had a few weeks to get to the race.
Right.
And we were going to taper, so it was fine. Shanda's reading White Noise right now. And we're in Medford. We just got here, and AQI is ripping up.
Almost 400 this morning.
Yeah, this morning it was like
371.
yeah, and now we're down to like 160 or something, but it's okay. We worried about the AQI on race day. There's times where there were some fires in Oregon that would blow there. It'd be horrible. There was one night we panicked about that, but ultimately it cleared up like I don't even remember, a week before or something, and then it was just good.
It's fine.
Yeah, we got some rain in Northern California where a lot of the fires were in the Oregon coast, and that sort of cleared things up until the race was done.
Yeah.
Go! So then the race itself was September 16th. It's basically starts near Mount Jefferson, which is the second highest point in Oregon at 10,500 feet, and then you run north on the PCT toward Mount Hood, which is the first highest peak, 11,200, and then you turn around and run back for 100 miles. You start out by running around O'Lalley Lake once. It's at like 4,000 feet ish.
Yeah.
Like 3,000 something is the low point, 5,000 something is the high point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that demanding. That's a pretty comfortable altitude, I think, even for people living by sea level.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a crazy amount of vert. So Trevor and Lisi flew into Portland, where we met them on Thursday, September 14th. Hung out. The next day we drove to O'Lalley Meadow Campground, which was like 2.5 hour drive. We sort of deliberately got there early because we knew we wanted to stay there. There's dispersed camping options for sure that we had also seen, but it just seemed very convenient to be at what would be the final aid station, which is also going to be located in that campground, and just have a campsite where we're not hopping over trees and stuff when you're tired or before the race. And then that night we went with Trevor and Lisi to the pasta feed, the bib pickup, which was very well run.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like the race directors, whose names I don't remember, were very...
Renee and somebody, her husband. It was, leading up to the event, throughout the entire event, very, very well-oiled machine, it seemed like. And they had hosted several other events. So, anyway, I felt like it was... tight. The whole thing was well marked throughout the course, and the event the event the night before was really fun.
So the next morning, it was a nice start. It was like 8 a.m. or something. So that it was nice where we didn't really have to get up that early. It would come into play that it would already sort of be hot as a couple hours into the race. But the start went smooth. And then you immediately were on the ball, like hydrating, taking salt tabs, eating a bunch. Yeah,
that first loop around O'Lalley Lake is just over 12 miles, and that was actually the hottest that I was the entire race.
Because that whole area had been burned in a big fire.
Yeah.
I don't
and there
remember
was
what
zero
year.
shade.
So yeah, there's no shade.
And people went out pretty fast, I think, there was just a lot of adrenaline. There's a decent bit of punchy climbing, and that was the more honestly, it was the more technical part of the race. But one thing that I did that was kind of a last minute decision was to, like, I had my pack with 1 liter of fluid, maybe like 500 water, 500 tailwind, or whatever I was using. And then I took an extra half liter handheld. And I'm really freaking glad I did that, because I drank it all. And I was, yeah, like you said, I was very, I don't know, I was just trying to get ahead of the game with hydration up front when my stomach wasn't bothering me. And that ended up serving me really well, because I think a lot of folks didn't do something like that, and early in the race ended up sinking themselves and paid for it big time later with both nutrition and hydration issues from those first really sunny, like pretty warm 12 miles.
Yeah, so I remember you coming into the first aid station, O'Lally Lake, 12 miles in, like you said. So you arrived at 10:20, 2 hours, 20 minutes after the start of the race, and you were already very hot, and we're talking about that, and everyone else was as well. And so then you left, and we weren't going to see you until mile 40, so you had another 28 miles to go before we were allowed to be at an aid station. There's 3 aid stations in between that crew wasn't allowed to access, which made sense based on their locations. But we were like, wow, there's going to be some, what's the word? Carnage. And during that time, between O'Lally Lake and Clackamas, where we could see you again, you saw people in the throes.
Yeah. And
you dispensed Zofran to someone, you dispensed pot gummies.
Yeah.
Or a small dose of that to someone.
Yeah. Yeah, people were cramping and vomiting. I think, the heat took people by surprise. And I don't even remember the temps. What was it, a high of? Actually, no, it did get pretty hot. Maybe high of upper 70s or low 80s.
Yeah, I think it just was warm right away because the late start and it was a sunny day, and there's much more extreme examples of heat for sure, but because it's Oregon in the fall, in the forest, it's sort of expected that it'll be a cool race. And I think some years they've had rain where it's been almost a cold race.
Yeah. Well, and I was not heat acclimated for sure. Like the training happened in Alaska.
You were a little bit in Portland. You flew
you
flew into Portland. It was warm there.
Yeah, but I guess if I would have known that it would have been 82 for a high or whatever it was, I would have played my cards a little bit differently earlier in the training. Doing some more saunas, and I guess I was in the hot tub, but.
So we had a 22-hour, a 24-hour, and a 28-hour sort of pace chart, so we could estimate on the fly, so the crew could estimate on the fly when you'd be coming in, and you'd have some idea of how to pace yourself. So the goal was 24 hours, so 24-hour, but shoot for 22-hour, and then back off if needed. So even with the 22-hour, the ideal situation that we were planning for, you came into Clackamas a mile 40 20 minutes early. You showed up at 4:21 p.m. And at that point you were feeling good.
Yeah. I felt a lot better after that first aid station where Lacey got me set up with the ice bandana. And just like total
I don't even remember that.
Drenched down. Yeah.
Nice.
And I used that throughout like the daylight hours basically. So that cooled my body down really well, and then basically we ran into the shade right away, and most of the rest of the course was shaded. So it dropped my temp, and I just like relaxed a little bit. And two, like that first loop around the lake and then the first aid station felt like kind of frantic. The aid station was, even
maybe
though it was
adrenaline.
Yeah. Even though it was organized, I had like missed a turn, and it was really loud, and like just shenanigans were going on, so I felt kind of psychologically jacked up. And then after I left O'Lally and started going towards Clackamas, I just relaxed. And then the course from that point like is mostly downhill. There's a little climb before you get into Clackamas, and then there's another drop. And I don't know if I ended
yeah.
up paying for this later, but yeah, I was feeling great on all fronts, and I just like went with it. I wasn't racing, I was, but probably because of how I was running the downhills, I've wondered if this like ended up
I have too.
with me having some issues later, which we'll get into. But anyway, that's flowy and really lovely downhill, and I guess I should have been more conservative.
Well, you just kind of rolled.
Yeah.
And you were moving well. You weren't overshooting the best case scenario by much at all, so it seemed like a reasonable move.
And I never felt...
It didn't seem that as dangerous as it maybe was. I don't know.
Well, my sort of litmus test is how I feel cardiovascular-wise when it's a really long event, and I never felt overtaxed after I left O'Lally Lake.
Mm-hmm. So Clackamas, you felt good, and then you left, and we weren't going to see you again until like 10:40 at night. It was like 4:37 when you left. And so during that time we went and like the lake by the dam aid station, which was mile 67.7. We swam and had some dinner and tried to sleep for a while, and we're just kind of waiting. And then 10:40 came and you weren't there, and then it was like half an hour later, and then it was like an hour later and you weren't there, and I was like, well, something went wrong.
What was happening in my...
So what was that? Yeah, when did it go wrong?
Yeah.
It was sort of a slow development, but next was Little Crater. After Clackamas, you went to Little Crater Lake, Frog Lake, and that's mile 54.6. Then you turn around back to Little Crater Lake. Yeah.
Frog Lake was kind of like the turnaround, even though it wasn't exactly halfway. But after Clackamas, like I changed my uppers and got all dried off, and immediately put on another ice bandana, it got me all wet again.
That was at Little Crater Lake?
No, that was with you at Clackamas.
At Clackamas.
And I would have done that differently. Anyway.
Oh, because it sort of made you cold?
Yeah, I ended up being okay, but night fell within a couple hours, and so I was having to do like
you didn't need that
clothing changes in the trail just to like not get really cold. I was coming into that turnaround, so the Frog Lake, it was after dark. I don't know what time it was at this point, and I was walking over just this little like wooden bridge or something, and I felt my right, like the inside of my right quad pull a little bit, and I had never had any issues with that leg before, so I noticed it. It was a mild sort of like twinge, and I thought, okay, that's weird. Hopefully this isn't going to be a problem. And actually it deteriorated pretty quickly. It wasn't slow. It happened really, really quickly. And within like 5 miles, I couldn't run.
So this was right after Frog Lake?
Pretty much, yeah. Right around that's all fuzzy now, but like it was after dark, it was getting cold, the knee was messed up, and quad, and it was the most painful thing I've ever experienced running. So then I was like, well, this is going to be a very, 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 very long finish, and I like never let myself think.
So it was extremely painful.
It was extremely painful.
Didn't realize that. Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
just when you were running.
When I was running, or basically the problem was flexion of my right leg, and so obviously you're doing that with running, but you're also doing that any stepping up or any stepping down or stepping over a rock or a root or a whatever.
You're flexing your knee more.
Yeah.
That was the trigger.
And so I, anytime there was anything besides perfectly flat, I had to be extremely cautious as to not like cause some crazy amount of pain.
Jolt.
Yeah. And it just got worse. And basically I hiked for what seemed like hours. Excuse me, it was probably a couple hours. And then I was able to like sprinkle in some steps of running here and there. And there were some miles where I was like able to hike 15-minute miles. So I was happy with that. And just like set my sights on when I was going to see you guys next at the dam.
Okay, now I'm almost 64 miles in. Blech. Gone through some really rough quad crap. Mostly I'm walking.
And so when you did show up, I would just like stand by the lake, and like when there's lights coming in, I'd be like, oh, okay, this is hopefully her, and then it just wouldn't be open over. And eventually you did. And when you did,
which was like 65 miles or something.
Okay, yeah. So dam was 67.7 miles. You showed up at 11:50. So you had gone from like sub 22-hour pace to like 24-hour pace in a very short amount of miles, I guess.
Yeah.
So you had a couple like needs. There was like a foot like blister issue.
Yeah, my gait had changed because of how I had to protect the knee.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was developing blisters. And I was wearing smart wool, just like single layer. And then we did a shoe and a sock change where I went to like double layered socks, and you put some Mepilex on my blisters.
Did we like pop some blisters and then put Mepilex dressings?
It helped a lot.
Which are like foam dressings.
Yeah.
Foam padded, yeah.
That helped a lot. And I went into some roomier shoes with thicker socks.
And so then from the dam at 4 miles, the next aid station was Clackamas, which we could see you at again. And that was mile 71.7, and that's where pacers can join.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined at that point, and Trevor and Lisi drove the car back to Olele Meadows Campground, which will be the final aid station. We're going to try to crash and get some sleep.
Mm-hmm.
See you in a few hours, or many hours.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, maybe just kind of let me lead for a bit to get an idea of what I've been up to.
And at that point, the mentality was, went from like, what's the hour goal to just finish it.
Yeah.
I think for you, I mean, that's what I was thinking. I don't know if you ever said
Yeah. I definitely laid the time goals to rest, and I was totally fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that the new goal that I held on to was like, don't let this bother you, basically. Like, if you're gonna finish this,
don't go in like a mental spiral.
Yeah, like just keep a
negativity.
positive outlook. And
and
the other thing too, with like being in so much discomfort, I was thinking, okay, well, I've heard of people in scenarios where you're like at death's door, and then somehow a switch flips and you're able to run again. And actually I wasn't on death's door, but totally jacked up. And then after we did the sock change and the blister addressing the blisters at the dam, between there and Clackamas, I actually sort of was quite revitalized. And that period, looking back at my pace, like that period was the fastest I had run in hours and hours and hours. So yeah, just like the psychological
basically
shift
since you got injured.
Yeah.
Then you were able to sort of increase the pace a little. And so I was in a pretty good mood. I was trying to keep the pace, or keep the energy up, keep a positive energy.
I was fading for sure. Fading sort of energy wise.
You guys working on coffee?
Yeah, we got coffee.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, coffee.
Sweet.
That.
Yeah.
And I had taken, like, I don't remember the dosage, but a small amount of hot gummy, like 2.5 milligrams or something, which tends to actually wake me up and kind of put me in a better mood, more playful mood. And how's everyone doing?
Hey, Pacers are doing great.
I know.
I'm a Pacer. I'm Ken.
I know. I feel so good, and
Yeah.
it's like 5 miles in, I feel
we're just
decent.
trying to help our...
We got to Red Wolf aid station at mile 77, and I was getting sort of like pumped up, and you were just sort of grinding out discomfort. And you gave someone another round a different racer, some like 4 milligrams of Zofran, and like the last Zofran tab he had. And
well, part of I was confident that I wouldn't need anything for nausea by that point because I was going so slowly.
And
relative
it was
to what
night,
I wanted to be
and
going.
It was cool.
It was night and it was cool. I hadn't had issues all throughout the day, and I was able to take in a lot of calories and a lot of liquid because I wasn't going really quickly. And yeah, throughout that
you had
whole
really
thing,
kept yourself your fuel tank topped off.
Yeah, and looking back,
time.
I was peeing clear, and I peed a lot throughout the race, but I took in 14 liters.
Wow.
Which is an unbelievable amount.
Yeah.
Like probably my body weight. I don't know how much.
I don't know.
2.2. Well, no, not quite. Okay.
That's kilograms. Liters. I don't know how much that weighs.
Yeah. Maybe a third of my body weight or half. Yeah.
And I think by that point you had maybe picked up like a stick from the woods. No. So after that, I don't think it was me that suggested it. I think you realized that you could sort of brace with the stick on your bad knee so as to not flex it as much. And so I think sometime between Clackamas and Red Wolf, I would just like pick up sticks and sort of like clack them together and like rub them and get some of the bark off. And then eventually you're running with 2 sticks as like a way to like brace. Like
we didn't bring poles. I never run with poles. You often run with poles, and I'm just like, oh, we won't need this. Save space. Our car was super packed.
Because it seems like not a super steep course, so poles just seem like unnecessary.
Yeah,
weight.
And I'll never do that again.
Well, just having them, like not running with them, but like
yeah.
having them ready on the aid station if something like this were to happen.
Right.
So then next up was Warm Springs at mile 82.5, and there was like that was a fun one for me where there was this sort of like drunk guy like reading dad jokes from a book, and they had like techno music
drinking
going, drinking Fireball, and I was getting all pumped up, and it was just like just being way over the top, and you were sort of, I think, on the decline again, like physically, mental, and so after we left, you're like asked if I could tone it back a little bit because the energy discrepancy was so big.
I just couldn't handle it.
I'm just like on a fun run,
that.
and you're just in the throes of pain,
like 80 miles in or something, whatever it was.
And so then I toned it back. We saw the sunrise between Warm Springs and Pinheads.
Got out of the trees for it. 87 miles. Timestamp.
And then at Pinheads, we met a dude that was pretty warped and was saying ouch with every step when he was going up and
I
downhill.
forgot about that.
Yeah. We just exchanged positive affirmations to each other and told him to keep going.
I forgot about that.
And then
I was feeling ouch every step. Yeah.
And then but that night at one point you had like gone in the woods and peed all over your underwear.
Well, so for a while,
if that's the worst thing that happens, that's good.
Well, it was the worst thing from a fashion perspective, but the reason that happened is because I could no longer even come close to squatting.
Yeah,
like
so you were like sort of like leaning at an angle.
My right leg bent at most maybe like 15 degrees. And
you were like sort of like sitting on down trees
on
and stuff, or leaning on trees.
Leaning and laying, and it was I was not in my greatest state, but totally soaked my underwear, and then had to get those off.
So you doffed them, and then they were put in a reused cup.
I was just gonna throw them in the woods, and you said no, let's bring them back.
Yeah. Anyway, so that happened in the dark. Got to Pinheads, saw the sunrise, got to Pinheads. And then it was just getting another 8 miles to O'Lally Meadows, where Trevor and Lacey had crashed.
And where we had camped the
And
night
where
before.
we were camped.
We
Yep.
had camped.
Where our
The
tent
nice
was.
thing about that too is, I mean, having visited that campground and gained a little bit of familiarity with those trails like a month earlier, psychologically, it was like, okay, I know where I am.
Sorry.
Ah!
Sorry. Oh man.
Here, I'll put
Okay,
that
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna swing in and get them up.
Okay.
What's good? What time do you guys get up?
We got to O'Lally Meadows.
Saw Trevor and Lacey.
Saw Trevor and Lacey. They were excited because we had like 3.7 miles left, so then they rushed off to the finish line to wait for a long time as we slowly worked our way there. But we were back in the burn zone. You were back in the burn zone. So the sun was getting intense again. It was like this wasteland.
That section after O'Lally Meadows felt like it took forever. Just
To you.
it was it felt disproportionate.
Because it was
last
almost
section.
done, and we knew we were going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did the finish feel?
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of was like you already knew you were going to finish, so there was no like breaking down and crying or anything. I don't think.
No, and I expected to like do that basically. I hadn't ever had like an epiphany during other ultras, but I expected to have one during this one. And
And you did not.
and I did not, which was totally fine.
Works pretty well. There it is. Oh yeah.
That's MacGyvering, right?
She's never been into poles.
We might just.
But what I learned was that I could physically keep going in a lot of pain. I learned that like the way you feel can also change over the course of a long distance. I mean, obviously, but like when I was in that amount of pain, it's not like that was what I was going to experience until I stopped running. It shifted, and I don't know whether it was adrenaline or some other mixture of hormones, but yeah, there were periods where I felt relatively okay, and that was really interesting. And then yeah, like when the breakdown happened was basically when we got back to Portland.
Well, so yeah, so we Trevor drove us back to Portland, and your knee was really swollen. I don't think we talked about this.
Yeah.
So your legs were swollen, your legs
Sure.
both had lower, like near the ankles, had like pitting edema.
I had pitting edema. Well, I don't know if it showed up immediately, but like from the knee down all along my shin and in my ankles for like a week. Yeah.
And your knee was huge. And then, I'm not sure if you wanted to share this, but your shower when we got to Portland, you had to you were like in.
It was a full assist.
You were a full assist. You had to be like undressed and like washed in the shower, basically.
Yeah. Everything was so sensitive and just like unbelievably painful. And I think at that point, like I knew it was over, and
you could relax and just absorb all the
absorb
musculoskeletal damage.
Totally. Yeah.
We were really fortunate to have Trevor and Lacey.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just had a friend or their spouse as their only crew, so that was huge for their assist. And yeah, basically we had breakfast with him and then drove back to Medford, and you just tried to elevate your legs as much as
Yeah.
possible, whether you're sleeping or napping.
I had so that was a Saturday into Sunday. Obviously, I had Sunday off. I took Monday off, and then I started a new job on Tuesday. But like remote, so the whole time I was able to have my leg up, or both,
Like you were like working with your leg on a pillow on a chair.
for several days. And like when we were sleeping, I'd have my legs both up.
Under pillow or over on pillows.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, so it was a few weeks before I was back to moving normally.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I was walking wacky for at least, honestly, like at least a week and a half or 2 weeks
Mhm.
because of the knee. That was really the only thing that stuck around for a while.
And that stayed swollen for a while, but eventually you didn't really do anything other than rest and elevation.
Yeah, I wore a brace actually.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, in hindsight, next time I do something like this, I will definitely have poles. We had an ACE wrap with us and we didn't use it, and we should have. I don't know if we had that knee brace, but I should have used that just like to get pressure and stability on there right away. But once I stopped like thinking that I should be stretching and like sort of doing active recovery, and just like kept the leg as immobilized as possible, then is when it started to turn. But I didn't do PT or anything. I think I'm fine. I guess it's 6 months out now, or well, not quite 5.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to note is that, yeah, how many months out is this?
5 as of like
Oh, is it?
yesterday,
November,
I think.
December, January, February, yeah. We're 5 months out, so
The memory is fuzzy,
Yeah,
but the
we're-
body is healed.
yeah. It was a good beginner's, it was a forgiving course
Yes.
in that if you would have been doing something really steep, it
my
would have
God.
been up and down, it would have been harder,
would
so
have been way
it was a
worse.
good, yeah, it was a good beginner course.
Yeah, it was like 11,000 loss and gain.
Was it?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm really glad we chose this as the first. And yeah, I mean, I would do it again. Not actually, I mean, but in the same circumstances, yes, I would definitely do it again. It was really well organized, and I felt like the race directors and everybody along the course took really great care of people.
You capturing this?
Yes. It's October 7th. 6th.
Yeah.
It's a Friday.
Yep.
Just-
Aaron turned
just,
63 yesterday. Oh,
There's mango.
just do
Um,
this. After her 100-mile race 14 days ago. She ran
the
100
first
miles.
run was
Oh.
5 minutes ago, running up the driveway. I think there's a long ways to go yet.
No, I'm